the door closing the official signal? Well, it is 4:05. Thank you guys for the patience. Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, a little tired, are we? Saturday of the con? Okay, all right, everybody's going to need a nap before the party's today. What?
It's Sunday.
Holy crap! Really?
Are you on the right panel?
All right, I guess I've been enjoying my con.
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it is my birthday weekend, everybody. Thursday. So thank you so much. Wow, we're going to start over. Hi, everybody. Oh, my goodness. Welcome to the weirdest panel I've ever been on. Not for the panelists, but for the topic, the making of were-creatures. Thank you all for being here for the fun of it. We are, as the description says, taking the lycan out of lycanthrope, because technically that only means werewolves, and we are not trying to be exclusionary here. This is big tent thrope. So we're kind of throwing out the thought experiment of asking how many various were-curses into other animals might pose unique challenges. I mentioned this to my my Uber driver on the way to the airport, and he's like, "You're doing what?" Okay, and then to his credit, he just ran with it, and he's like, "Well, have you thought about a were-gerbil?" And I'm like, "No, but I'm pretty sure we're glad Richard Gere didn't." So, yes, that is a generational joke. Thank you very much, and highly inappropriate. I'm so sorry. But my name is Leighann Lord. I am the least qualified person to be on this panel for this topic. I am a stand-up comedian and author, and I've been doing comedy shows over at the Sheridan, and then over right across the hall on Skeptrack. We have a show tonight. Just a general comedy show called Geekapalooza. You guys are welcome to attend at 10 o'clock tonight, but I know that conflicts with some fun stuff that you are doing. So if you want a couple of minutes of giggles, you're always welcome to come on over and join us. But I want to turn this over, or just open this up to my esteemed panelists to introduce themselves, who are going to say smarter things than I will this afternoon. Emily, please.
I can't say if I'm going to say smarter things, but I'm guaranteed to say more horrifying things. So you're welcome. Hi, I'm Emily Finke. I am trained as a forensic anthropologist, but I actually prefer working with living people more. So hi, I'm a science communicator, and my specialty is answering very, very dumb questions in very serious ways. So please find the strangest animals and ask me how they will work.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mohamed Noor. Probably even less qualified than anybody else here as well. I am a biologist. However, I'm a fruit fly geneticist. We haven't seen that many were fruit flies. Given we see what we do to them in the lab. I don't want that fate. I don't want to even go there.
I've seen
on the full
that
moon
movie.
nights. Yeah, the fly. Oh. Anyway, happy to at least brainstorm with you guys and see what we can come up with together. So thank you for having us.
I guess the subtitle for this panel should have been hashtag imposter syndrome, because apparently none of us feel qualified to be here. And yet here we are, but that's DragonCon for you. I don't know if there are any folks in here who are fans of Laurel K. Hamilton series. Okay, a couple of, yes, she's got 20 something books. And in her, and this is I guess kind of why I got hooked in to this topic, Laurel K. Hamilton writes about a world where vampires and werewolves just exist. It's just a thing, it's accepted on its face. But it's not just werewolves. There are tigers and lions and bears, oh my. I'm sorry. But rats and snakes, and each were community is a community. They have their own rules and guidelines and how things work and how they interact with each other. And so it's very interesting, but probably not very scientific. So for me, I guess the most interesting in that universe were the were-lions. Yes, they are the most violent of the were groups in that book series. And they're only that violent because it's when the men are in charge of the pride. When they let the women be in charge, things are run a little bit more smoothly. Go figure. But it's those little tidbits that, we can explore. But I know you have a couple of... Yes,
I
please.
definitely have thoughts about were-lions. So my favorite thing about were-lions is if you actually took lions and made them into people, they would not be the most violent thing out there. They would be the lazy ones sitting in front of the television like... Yeah, give me that marathon. Give me that Netflix binge. Because lions are actually pretty lazy in general. They like to take the easiest path into getting food, catching food. They like to steal food from other people.
Well,
You mean
were-lions.
they like to steal people as food? What?
No. Most lions don't like to eat people. We're not very tasty and we come armed, so they would prefer to eat things like gazelles. They like to eat things that are easier prey. Lions, not gonna terrify me as a were creature. Can I tell you what would truly terrify me as a were creature?
Please.
Were hippopotamuses. So hippopotamuses are horrifyingly dangerous.
Are they?
Yeah, they are.
Not just hungry hippo?
No. You really don't want to mess with a very, very large herbivore because most herbivores are not all that top of the food chain, so they have to learn to protect themselves. So you fight an herbivore the size of a Mazda, it's gonna win. So we take a human. We make it a hippopotamus. So now you have a smart herbivore the size of a Mazda. Still probably has some rage issues. I'm not going to mess with were hippopotamuses.
What was that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Or read River of Teeth. An excellent book.
And I don't know if it's too soon to ask this type of question, just hypothetical. Are we going to discuss how there's this mass difference? Like there's human size and then hippo size. Where does all that extra mass come from? Are we just not gonna play that game?
This is the big thing that comes up all the time in all sorts of sci-fi. They're always like, so I'm a big Star Trek fan, and like they have like the tribbles, and they reproduce constantly. I'm like, what are they converting into mass? Are they converting air into mass?
Well,
What is happening?
They ate the grain.
Well, so some of them are green, but it depends on which series you're looking at. Like in short treks, there was some that just completely took over the entire ship.
Oh.
It doesn't. I mean, there was no grain there. You see them just sort of like rolling in the halls. Like, are they just converting like the little bits of carbon dioxide into like? Yeah, it's a little bit out there.
So a fruit fly.
Yeah.
If you made a fruit fly, human size.
Yep. It would fall apart. So
It would fall apart.
Yeah, most things. So we tend to think of like ants as like super strong and things like that. But so this is a great reference to Ant-Man. If anybody watched Ant-Man, there's a problem. It's called the square cube law. So if you take something and you double its size, right? So let's say you make it twice as tall, and you're making it 2 times in every dimension. So its volume and mass would be 8 times, right? It's the cube. But its ability to hold itself up is based on the cross section, which is the area. So it'd be 4 times stronger, but 8 times bigger for every time you double it. So if you took an ant or a fruit fly and made it gigantic, it would just collapse upon itself. You'd have to make it made of lead or something like that. Whale outside of water. Yeah, good analogy. Great thing.
What part?
Which part of it?
The math part? Because I got lost too.
Okay, sure. So it's called the square cube law. So let's say if you're doubling its size, so you're making it 2 times that, you're basically making it 8 times more volume because it's length times width times height. So it's the cube, right? But in terms of its ability to hold itself up, it's the cross section that's what holds it up. So that's the square. So you're making it 8 times heavier, but 4 times stronger for every time you double it. That's why it's called the square cube law. If you Google it, there's a whole Wikipedia page on the square cube law.
And this explains why I was an English major.
Yeah, but this also works the other way. Like if you make something like a hippopotamus tiny, it would be like way stronger than an ant by far.
Ooh, so if you make a hippo human-sized, and
Yeah,
they still have
it
those
would be-
giant hippo teeth.
Yeah, it'd be
Ooh.
bad.
Ooh.
It would fall apart because it's not able to hold itself up.
It might have some
Bigger
pretty
is bad,
sturdy...
smaller is good for getting stronger.
Yeah.
It'll be very, very strong. I'm not sure about the bulletproof aspect. It depends on what it's actually made of course. But yeah, that's a great question though.
So if you wanted to create something like a fruit fly on a human size, could you make it something like an ankylosaur, like a lower to the ground armored? Like it couldn't fly.
No,
but,
the flying would be a really big problem. But yeah, something that just crawled around. Yeah,
maybe.
Like a big ant sort of thing.
I feel like you're taking the lycanthrope part of it, where you're actually using the human part in there. Though.
Yeah.
Like you're not factoring that into the
No, it's true.
equation, right?
No, it's true. That's true. Depends on how much. I guess if you go like full wolf or full fly in this case. Yeah. No, it's true.
You're actually mixing the two.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point. I wasn't thinking about a
So if I
were
would
fly.
convert it into a fruit fly, I would still be cranky and not know what day it is.
And you wouldn't be able to process caffeine.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the deal breaker right there.
No, alcohol still works.
Yes. Now, that's one of the things that always worries me about werewolves, because most painkillers do not work very well on dogs and in fact can hurt them a great deal. So if you're a werewolf and you have a migraine, you are out of luck.
Ooh.
Well, essentially in
Well, this is
the
the
Laurel
human
K.
part.
Hamilton series, and I'll say this very quickly before we welcome our next panelist. In the Laurel K. Hamilton series, they talk about when they're super strong and they can withstand a lot of pain, except with silver. But when they're being operated on, they cannot get anesthesia or any kind of painkillers because in the book, and this is just fiction, they metabolize it way too quickly. There's just no way, and then they heal too fast, so they just kind of have to deal with that pain. Kind of like high school, just have to deal with the pain. But I want to welcome our third panelist, and just to catch up a little bit, I thought it was Saturday, and everybody has corrected me to let me know that it is Sunday. And it is still Sunday. Okay, thank you. But Lali, welcome to the panel.
Thank you, and I'm so sorry that I'm late. I thought this panel was at 4:30. I apologize. Thank you all for being here on time.
Yeah, let's see. We've talked about the worst, or the scariest.
Yeah, the scariest to me.
Okay, scariest to you. Now, if you had the ability to be aware of something, what would you want to be?
Could be a weird dragon.
Because you already have a con built around
There
you.
you go. Breathe fire too. That was a bonus.
Now, so that brings up an interesting problem. Like when I think of dragons, I think big, right? Have you guys talked about the whole conservation of mass issue?
Yeah, that was the first thing we did. Yep.
Well, we didn't call it that though.
Yeah.
He said some number thingies.
Oh, that was about making bigger size, but the part before was about that with the tribbles.
The thing that I would like to be is my favorite animal is a seahorse,
Ooh.
but that brings with it the problem of what if I'm not near water? Right? Then I would you would be like stuck living on a houseboat somewhere. Just in case.
I would
have to carry a little bottle of water with you and hope that your friends would.
So I have a technical question about were creatures. Does it have to be full moon, or could it just be like you could just convert?
Well, I would think there would be lots of different kinds of triggers depending on what the.
Because if you could just convert, you could just like you could be like a mermaid, like just as you're about to jump in the water, you're like, go seahorse, whoosh. Like the Wonder Twins.
I mean, I teach middle schoolers, and the trigger is like right before lunch.
Yeah.
What was that about Hellboy?
Abraham's outfit from Hellboy. He had a full-on suit so he can be out of water.
So we're talking about seahorses in mech suits?
Yeah, I was
There
about to
is
say.
that. Fair point.
I think I saw that over at the Sheridan earlier, for sure. Okay, I'm completely unqualified to be here. But if I were going to be aware anything, would wear elephant work?
You could be. So there are populations of elephants with pygmy dwarfism, island dwarfism.
Yeah.
Okay.
So elephants and other mammals on islands tend to either get real big or get real small. Elephants on I forget what island it is. There's a population of elephants that are very, very tiny. It's a smaller island, smaller carrying capacity, less food. So it is a population of elephants that are much, much smaller. So you could be a pygmy elephant.
And still fit in my house. That
Yeah,
would be awesome.
yeah.
That would be awesome. But now, on a practical level, humans, we're not always at our best with differences. So wouldn't were-creatures of any sort be quickly killed out?
Probably.
Oh, that was a simple question. There we go.
It depends on how useful they are. It's like, hey, you're really strong. You're our slaves now. Or, hey,
Ooh.
I think.
Did she say the S word?
Yeah.
But no, you are right. Yeah, how would we utilize?
Yeah.
That's a nice way of saying it, I guess. How good? Oh, how good they
Oh.
taste.
It could also
Ooh.
depend on the social structure of the animal in question. Say, like a pride of lions actually operates on a social level, so they might do well in human society, whereas maybe trying to think, what's a good antisocial? Cat. Oh no, wait, we have those already. Yeah, we'll say octopi. An octopus might not deal well in a very, very large society, where it would deal well in a smaller society.
Yeah. Or, if we're dealing with something like a recessive gene, recessive genes can persist in populations for a long time, even
True.
if they're deleterious. Because you would need 2 of those recessive genes, one from each parent, in order for that trait to be expressed, right?
Yeah.
So your average recessive disorder is 1 in 10,000 in the population. So, times 2, like times itself, 1 in 10,000, 1 in 10,000. That's the likelihood that 2 of those genes are randomly going to meet in the population. Now, if you have a lot of wares concentrated in one area, then that would seem to indicate like cousins getting it on with cousins, because then that number goes to like 1 in 64, 1 in 32. You see it popping up all over the place.
So the odds are much better in Georgia, is what you're saying.
I'm sorry. Do
we have
a
a mic for a Q&A?
I realized we were going to do questions at the end, but it kind of doesn't make sense. This is
Yeah.
a very interactive conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like this would be a good Q&A
Yes,
kind of.
yes.
I have to say, it's hard to pass off the mic when people are
Yeah, that's
just popping up all over the place.
So
I will wait for y'all signal.
So the question was, or assuming it's. Yeah.
So that was a
I got
where.
the worst of it, don't worry.
The question was, we're
that's
assuming
the
it's
rare
genetic, but
where
it's not
mic.
necessarily genetic,
Yeah.
right? Is that right?
So do we have any were-bats in the audience?
Wait, what was that?
Wait,
Guys, we can't hear you at
you've
all.
got to wait for
You're
the
saying
mic,
it's
sir.
please.
spread because you're bit by a werewolf rather than being genetic.
Most werewolf mythology, it's spread by being bit by a werewolf, so that suggests that it would be a bacteria infection.
Yeah.
Viral.
Not genetic.
I mean, it could be bacterial, it could be viral, it could be a prion.
Or it could be a breeding population. It really depends on your source material. There are fiction universes where it is you are born a werewolf. The Gail Carriger series, like the Paris Protectorate, and those have a breeding population of werewolves rather than you weren't created.
So what if it's more extreme? What if everybody has the predisposition to do it, but it's just giving you like some stimulus, like the bite itself is just giving you a stimulus, not even necessarily something alive, but like some environmental thing that maybe half the population already could.
So it's more like Avengers then.
Yeah.
Kind of. I was just tossing out one other model for that, rather than it being bacterial, viral, or stuff like that.
We
I'm sorry.
can't hear you if you don't have a microphone. Please raise your hand.
I have the microphone. One thing I wanted to say was like sometimes either bacterial or viral infections can like trigger something that we already have like I think in our genes. I know they trigger different conditions in different people sometimes, and so it could still be genetic, but just not under certain like duress or conditions.
So becoming a werewolf's kind of like the people who are predisposed to long COVID or something like that, or the people who are more likely to become werewolves. It's a good idea.
Or I mean, I hate to even bring it up, but in Twilight,
I love
being
sentences
exposed
that
to
start that.
vampires triggered the werewolf gene to kind of awaken and become turned on.
Oh, that would be an interesting question for were creatures. What if there were multiple populations of wares and you only got one if the other one was around? Say,
Ooh.
maybe, what would be a good mutualistic relationship?
Could we
Well,
share
you only
pheromone?
got were
Yeah.
cats if there were a lot of were mites.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, or maybe,
There's that pheromone that makes the we call it the locusts go crazy.
oh yeah,
Something
yeah.
like that.
Let's get. I think I saw. Unless you have somebody picked already, let's work our way across this way. I see 2 questions here, 1 here, and then we'll kind of come over to this side of the room.
I just have the mic really quick, and I just wanted to say if I was going to be a were creature, I'd want to be a were honey badger. No one brought that up yet, and I just wanted to say that.
That's cool.
Wow, I'm not even sure a honey badger needs to be aware. I mean, just badass on its own.
Somebody over there already mentioned something along the lines of something I was thinking, is conditions like vitiligo frequently are genetically inborn, but usually do not present until there's a stressor.
Yep.
But I also feel like if this is genetically carried and it's in people, we need to remember that there are members of the general human population who will very much select for that, not against.
Fair point.
What do you mean that's you would intentionally look for that in your dating profile?
I guarantee you there's a dozen people in this room at least who would.
Great point.
W for W, where for where.
Okay. My idea of what might become a were creature, we all know how a mule happened to cross a horse with a donkey, and a few years back, some researchers did an experiment where they mingled the cells of a sheep embryo and a goat embryo and produced a unique organism composed of the cells of both creatures. And I don't know if that could possibly work with a human being and anything else, but
So this is not actually a hybrid, but some sort of like mosaic. Chimera's a technical term, but yeah. Okay.
So humans, there's not really anything close enough to a human to create a cross-species chimera or mosaicism. However, humans have mosaicism. You can't see because I've got a mask on, but I've got a birthmark on half of my face. Half of my cells express extra capillary building. So if I was a werewolf, I wonder if I would have like the typical cat, like white on one side of my face, splotchy on the other side. So you could probably see some pretty neat coat patterns in humans, like vitiligo. I can never pronounce it, but
Vitiligo.
yeah, thank you.
So I had the statement that you mentioned Twilight, and the werewolves in Twilight are confirmed in the book to not actually be werewolves. They're actually some other creature that happens to be spurred on by vampires, but they actually say in the books that they're not werewolves at all, and they mistook them for werewolves.
Just humans that turn into wolves.
Yeah.
Got it.
But
Understood.
it brings up the question of also, like, we were talking about the transformation thing earlier and what you would need to transform, and it brings up the question of, does there need to be a catalyst, or can there possibly be, you choose this, you choose to change form.
Wow. Thank you for saying that. Actually, I'm sitting here, I'm going through the books in my head. Yeah. And because they changed at will. It's not tied to the full moon.
Yeah.
Nice catch.
Well, they say it in the last book. They mention that they're not werewolves.
Cool.
Good to know.
Would being a murder hornet be one that would be acceptable?
Murder hornet. Murder hornet.
The murder hornets? Yeah. So the interesting thing about the murder hornets is you're going to need a population of were creatures for the murder hornets to parasitize. Oh no, I'm thinking of not murder hornets. I'm
Yeah,
thinking of
Yeah,
darn it.
different, yeah.
Although, I mean, like, now we're talking about something that kills with its butt.
Yeah.
Which.
Well, on a good night.
I mean, there it is. In the immortal words of Belle Biv DeVoe, never trust a big butt in a smile.
Ooh, could we, speaking of big butts, how about possums or snow leopards, where they actually have fat deposits in their tails to act as a reservoir in lean times or cold weather species? Could we have a snow leopard where as a human they're just really well endowed?
Oh my God.
Sure.
So that actually plays into my question. We talked about some of the possible cons of being aware of, like being a seahorse out of water or a fruit fly that can't fly because you're too big. But what about some of the pros you could get? Like what other extra senses might be on the table, like echolocation or thermal senses or other stuff? What would be some of the options there?
I mean, the easy one would be like a wider optical window where you could see like way into infrared or into ultraviolet. That would have a huge advantage in many respects, and lots of animals have that already.
Wow, I went really shallow. I was thinking were-lion, I'd have great hair.
I was thinking mantis shrimp. I would like to be, okay, not only would I like to be able to punch and break glass, because I'm super weak, I would love to be able to see what a mantis shrimp sees, but would it be, so you work with fruit flies.
Yep.
Would it be possible to change the human vision system to even become a faceted eye? Like,
I mean, well, the tricky thing is it reversible, or is it like you have to change back?
yeah, I don't know. Like, can you have the faceted eye in human form? Could you do that in a human skull?
I can't see an easy way of doing it. Well, I mean, the tough thing is that any of these metamorphoses are pretty extreme, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, if we're assuming that you can turn into a something, sure.
Touche.
There's a couple of questions down front here. Okay, go for it.
Kind of two things. One, I just wanted to add on how the transformation happens. The whole get bit and turn on the moon is actually pretty recent. If you go to really far historical concepts, when it wasn't a curse from the gods, a lot of the times it was a potion or some kind of ceremony you had to do, and then you could change into wolves or bears or all sorts of things.
Huh. Could you change back?
Yeah. And just when I heard about this panel, I thought what the most horrifying thing would be if you assume that it's not fully transforming into the animal, just becoming some kind of hybrid, would be a were-shrew.
Ooh.
On the mantis shrimp, I wanted to say, actually, they don't see a ton of colors. They just cannot perceive blended colors. So they have separate cones for each color. But also, if we're considering wares, any human that can turn into an animal is a selkie, a were seal that's condition is not the moon, but their specific coat.
Can I just say this is why I love this track?
So I have an idea about the selkie now, and I had never thought of that. What if selkies are basically what if a selkie would be more like a hermit crab?
Oh.
So the shell is an essential part of their body, but they can then shed it, and then of course you become a selkie if you take you can become a selkie in some mythologies if you take their shell. So it could be, again, a pheromonal change or some sort of the body reacts to something in the skin and takes on that selkie form.
So let me ask you a dumb question. What is a selkie?
It's a seal, basically a seal shifter.
Okay.
So selkies in traditional mythology, they're humans when they don't have their skin. Okay. When they put their skin on, they can go into the water and become a seal. If you take a selkie skin, in some traditions, it makes them, basically it binds you to that human who took your skin. In other traditions, if you take a selkie skin, you can become a selkie.
Gotcha. I thought at first they were saying selfie, and I was like, what?
Oh, sorry.
No, and we see some of that in South America too. The pink river dolphins were thought to be able to transform into women and would entice the fishermen into the water.
So we haven't really covered much of the transformational processes. I know the question has come up of whether it's a one-way or a two-way transformation. Are these were creatures just humans with an extra life cycle stage, like parasitized animals sometimes have, larval stages that are, almost hydras, and then they go into a pupal case which gets eaten by an animal, and then you actually get them into a nematode form or something. Like, is this the human ages out, like reproduces, and then goes into this other form?
It's probably going to depend on what the mechanism is that's doing it all. So, I mean, for example, like, birds have plumage changes in different times of year. That's fairly straightforward. It's, it's seasonal. You can do that sort of thing in principle. Maybe that could be tied to the moon. Now, if it's, you have to actually see it in a specific way as opposed to it just being like actually cyclical. I mean, there's a lot of things that are cyclical that don't actually necessarily have to do anything with the moon per se, but it might be just like the brightness of the brightness that's happening at a particular time or something like that, or the fact that there is high tide or something like that. But
Or coat color in various species.
yeah, coat color is a very common one too. But yeah, the mechanism is going to depend on the basically what you're trying to make happen. Is it something that's just instantaneous, and what is the trigger that's doing it? But basically, you're looking at some sort of plasticity, something where you can change from this and back at some point.
Now,
Go ahead, sorry.
Actually, did you?
Yeah, when you're talking about animals that have developmental changes, like from a egg to a caterpillar to a butterfly, that's a complete metamorphosis, right? Where like humans have direct development, we call that indirect development when they have these changes. But it's important to realize it's not, when a caterpillar changes into a butterfly, it's going to pupate and essentially melt completely into like a soup and then rebuild itself. There's no coming back from that. One of the characteristics of were creatures is the back and forth, right? The ability to go from one form to another. So yeah, I would say that's no, as a life cycle, I wouldn't classify it as part of a life cycle.
I really like to think about cat shifters because it fascinates me. They're very, you look at a cat and think, oh, that's a small mammal. I could be very close to that. But they have an entirely different walking system. They walk on their tippy toes, whereas we're plantigrade. We walk on the bottoms of our feet. So to become a cat shifter, you need to lengthen your toe bones, and you need to restructure all of your ligaments so that instead of walking the way we do, like that, you've got to walk like this. So you've got to remove those ligaments around so that you can walk on your toes, or so that, say, a were cheetah could run as opposed to walking very slowly like I do.
I wonder if
are these changes always going to be painful? Is it always going to hurt?
I would say at least for vertebrates,
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah.
I feel like it necessarily.
Like maybe a were crab.
What if you just release tons of dopamine so
Oh,
you don't feel it or something
Right,
like that when it happens?
We do all sorts. I'm hungover this morning.
For those that didn't hear, the question was, if it hurt, then why would you do it? People run marathons. People have babies. People, we do all kinds of things that hurt. Look at some of the shoes in here.
And I like the idea of releasing
Puberty.
dopamine because human bodies do things like that when you need to deal with something.
Yeah.
Like your body releases adrenaline so that it can bypass that pain reaction. So, say a were shifter, if their body is producing enough dopamine to make it go, oh, I'm going to kind of forget that pain and do that again because I want to do that. It could be intensely painful, but it also could be intensely painful in a way we don't remember.
We're going to get a question over here, but then after that, there was a young person in the front row who's been waiting quite a while.
Okay. So my question is this. So if, let's say this genetic anomaly started happening in modern times, what do you think would happen to the, in a general sense, the direction of science and military-industrial complex if people started turning into werewolves?
Oh, that's a great question.
Well, for starters, you'd have to get gaming chairs that accommodate tails.
Yeah.
I think right off the bat, you would see that.
So there's a fantastic short story by Shannon McGuire who writes really neat science fiction, where she talks about the military-industrial complex creating soldiers out of ocean creatures to basically use their effects. So you could have a were lionfish that can camouflage. You could have a were dolphin that could communicate across larger distances. You could have a were penguin, just because who doesn't want to wear penguin?
I don't have a science answer, but like just thinking about like things we see on TV. I mean, there's some extremes. So Marvel, for example, with X-Men and with Avengers, it's very much like clamp down on those things. We don't trust them. They cause all sorts of problems. Other extreme, The Boys. You see, basically an organization going rogue using these things. So I mean, all are possible and more.
So I was wondering, if you're like a were-mosquito, aren't you basically a vampire? Like, isn't that basically the same thing?
Love it.
Haven't been bitten a lot this year, more than any other year ever. I'm gonna say yes.
Next question: would that turn us into mosquitoes? Ooh.
Oh no.
Ooh.
Oh no,
That's a dark thought.
That's a whole new epidemic.
And then we'd have to go to the next panel and have a different idea.
There you go.
Completely.
Florida's bad enough.
Right, yes. Yeah. Yeah, humans carry diseases. Yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. A lot of the topics that you've brought up here have been addressed in some of the role-playing games that I play. Werewolf the Apocalypse, in particular, deals with tons of these questions. So it's just fascinating hearing your take on that. But I am getting ready to create a character for the Exalted system, and I need a Lunar Exalted who is a lionfish spirit form.
Oh.
So, Celix, thank you for bringing that up. First off, what book was that in? I need that book. And what do you think I should aim at?
Look up Seanan McGuire, Seanan. I think it was a short story in Lightspeed magazine. If not, I think it was a short story in Uncanny magazine. She is a very prolific writer, so. But if you look up Seanan McGuire, mermaids, navy, I think something like that will get you close enough to find it. And I'll try to find it and put that link in the DragonCon official Discord science track, if anyone wants it.
Is Aquaman aware?
Oh.
I'm not trying to start a fight, anybody. I'm just throwing it out there.
Like a mule.
Oh,
well,
okay.
Yeah.
Cute mule.
Yeah.
Who's got the mic next? Oh. Oh, right. The plaid mask.
Hi. How far down the organizational scale can we go? Can we have like where tardigrades that are astronauts, or like where viruses that are gene therapists? Like how small could we go?
Well, this comes back to that mask thing too. I mean, to wear a virus, like, where's all the mask going? Like, are we supposed to be a virus this big? Like, that would be horrifying. I don't know. No, it's true. It wouldn't be very effective. It's true. Unless you're just a ton of little viruses just in the shape of a person.
Oh, where? Are we not? I thought we were. A were tardigrade would be interesting because you might not need a space suit then. Like, you don't need to worry about your space shuttle.
That's always overstated. People always say that tardigrades are like they're resistant to everything in space. Like, yeah, there was a study that put some tardigrades in space and like 99% of them died. 1% didn't with like 1 day exposure. It's like, okay.
Well, you need less shielding then.
Yeah, that's right.
But then
That's right.
wouldn't that change like second season of Star Trek Discovery completely?
Yes.
Yes.
But it wasn't really a target. They just said it was like a target.
Yeah, let's just keep going. Yeah,
Yes, yeah, one more here, and then we'll move back across the room.
To bring up an issue brought up in an earlier panel, were-wombats, do they always poop cubes or only in wombat form?
Hello, I did research about this. So if you're not familiar with wombats, they not only do they poop cubes, but they use their cubes in communication. And yeah, they do like poop cube stacking to communicate to other wombats, both territorially and to attract wombats. So a were-wombat would have to have, so wombats have a selectively elastic lower intestine that allows them to poop in cubes. So like you're gonna end up with massive restructuring of your intestines, which isn't gonna be so pleasant while you're transforming. But then you're gonna be able to stack the biggest poop towers ever. Look.
Enjoy your dinner.
The first person who writes a were-wombat book, I'm backing your Kickstarter. I've got $50 for you in.
So how would whatever were creature you are affect the temperature environment you live in, like the climate? Like if you were a were polar bear, could you survive in a hot climate? Or
That's a great question.
if you were a were camel, would you die if you went up to Boston?
So I couldn't be a Jamaican were polar bear because I'd have to commute from Jamaica all the way. Wow. Okay.
Strong air conditioning.
Ooh, okay.
I think it would be easier for a cold weather species like a were polar bear might have an easier time living in Jamaica than a were lemur would have living in Antarctica. But luckily, the were lemur is going to have the human adaptations of putting on a coat. But a were polar bear, it's probably not going to be comfortable in Jamaica, but it could take a vacation there and drink a lot of pina coladas. Oh, wait, it couldn't. Polar bears actually process vitamins differently. They have to be able to basically conserve the vitamins they get. So actually, I'm not sure a polar bear could have a pina colada because that might actually create a vitamin C toxicity.
Or are you saying that the polar bear is an easy drunk?
It might be, yeah. They're lightweight.
Okay.
It could have a non-citrus, like it could have a nice beer maybe. I don't know if polar bears can have beer, but.
And that's how we get to bourbon, everybody.
So my question and kind of observation is, you had said that if you could be any type of were, you'd like to be a were dragon. I have a bearded dragon. And bearded dragons have to have UVB, UVA lights to be able to digest their food correctly and to pull the nutrients from their food. If you were that type of animal, also like guinea pigs, they have vitamin C deficiencies, so they have to have extra vitamin C in their diet. So if you were that type of were, would you also have to have the same type of environmental, and piggybacking on their question as well, environmental or dietary type of restrictions as the animals that you are?
That's a great question. So it's going to depend on some of them, right? So for the guinea pig, for example, guinea pigs are like us, that we can't make our own vitamin C. Guinea pigs can't make their own vitamin C. Now, in both cases, we have the gene for it. It's like GLO. I can't remember what it stands for, but the name of the gene is called GLO. Dogs have it. They're fine. They just produce their own vitamin C. We have basically mutations that have knocked it out. Guinea pigs have a different set of mutations that have knocked it out. Now, you put those two together, you still have no functional copies. So, if we were a were guinea pig, we're going to have vitamin C. Now, with respect to, say, the bearded dragon, we don't need UVA or UVB the same way. So the hope would be the human half could then, assuming it's still expressing a little bit in there, you could take over for those parts. But yeah, the were guinea pig's still going to need some citrus or something. Great question.
I think ultimately it's going to come down to how much time you spend in each form. right?
Yeah.
Because if you're talking about short-term metabolic functioning, maybe that's something that you have
Sure.
to seek out right away. If it's something that's a longer-term metabolic function, maybe not so much.
Good point.
Talking about were creatures and the weird behavioral effects that come out of that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So talking about were creatures and the weird behavioral effects that come out of that brings up the idea of creature wares, in which it is not a human turning into something else, but a something else turning into a human. So, like for example, a bear were would be a bear turning into a human, with all the problems that would come out of that.
There was an X-Files episode with that just in the recent season, wasn't there?
Really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was. There was one, yeah, where basically like he was. I forget what he was before, but he essentially became a person, had to go to work, and he was like, "This sucks." Is that what he was? I couldn't remember. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That's the one. Yeah, this is from the recent season. It's not from like the early 2000s.
Oh.
It was great. No, great idea.
So this is actually related to that last question. How much of the knowledge you need to be a were creature do you think comes with the form? You know, do we have were condors falling out of the sky because they don't know how to use their wings, or you know,
This is awkward.
where any mammal with a tail falling over all the time because they don't know how to use it to balance? How much of that inborn knowledge do you think comes with the shape?
That's a beautiful question.
Great.
And it's really tough. It's hard to imagine that the bite would transfer something that would also alter your brain so you know all those things. I mean, maybe, but it's hard to imagine.
Well, that'd be great if somebody had bitten me as a teenager so I'd know how to act. That'd be great.
Yeah, it probably
That's
would involve a
a
training
great
period.
question. I would love to have you in a writer's room working that
Yeah.
part out. That's really great.
Yeah.
Actually, most animals do need some transition to learn. Like it's not that they know how. Many animals don't actually know how to walk, so they look super awkward even at the beginning. So I actually
They just call it
imagine
cute because they're little.
yeah, I would imagine it would be kind of like getting sea legs. Like
Yeah.
every time you transition to the ocean, you need to learn to walk. So every time you become a were kangaroo, you need to learn how to balance with your tail and terrify people with your legs.
Well, now I'm thinking about like, okay, what if I was a were cat and I had just had my lip waxed?
Oh.
Oh.
Like, would I not have whiskers? Have you ever seen a cat try to walk without whiskers?
Yeah, that's bad.
That would be bad.
No.
Oh, wow.
I would have to make. I would have to make peace with my peach fuzz.
Yeah. So it looked like a drunk cat.
Yeah.
Is that what we're saying? Oh.
I mean, I think I saw that in the Marriott last night too.
Who's next?
Yeah.
Wait, can you? Oh, that was so fun. So like with the transition aspect, I'm assuming there'd have to be some sort of enzyme that would like help. Otherwise, that would take way too long. But does that also mean that like, if this was a were creature from like the Arctic Circle, if they took their vacation to the Caribbean, would they no longer be able to transition? Because like, or would that, no, that wouldn't work.
So you would be assuming that it's weather dependent? Like without the right
Maybe.
temperature, they would be inhibited from changing?
But also, if like your internal functions are the same. Wait, does that mean that if you're like a polar bear human were situation, would your internal functions, they would have to be different? So then it couldn't be an enzyme, could it?
So I think the way you could work with that is what if what is a creature that is very highly dependent on their area? A cave cricket. Cave crickets are very unique to the specific cave they live in. They require exactly the kind of water balance, the mineral balance in that cave. So if you are a cave cricket were creature, you're a human, you move to a different cave. Once you become a cave cricket again, you might actually not be able to survive. So I wonder, what you're positing, if your body would actually inhibit you from becoming a cave cricket in that other cave where you couldn't survive. Is that that kind of thing?
Yeah, so like, you can't go on vacation to the Bahamas if you're a polar bear.
Well, you could go on vacation. You just have to be
You just have-
either in your
yeah.
human form.
I see. Makes sense.
Thanks. So this got me thinking about, like, at least with vertebrates, maybe it would make more sense for something to transition because of morphogenesis and similarities and, like, limb structure and things like that, but those derived from, like, stem or non-deterministic cells. But I was wondering, like, would that be a way, like, to have wares with more non-deterministic or at least flexible cells? And if so, what about the energy cost of transition? Is that an issue? Like, are you going to have to eat like an Olympic swimmer to be able to transition?
Actually, there's an aspect that'll make that worse too. If you're using non-deterministic cells and you make them into, say, wolf, but then you transition back, you just like drop all the wolf. You essentially shed your wolfness, like leave that on the ground and move on. That would be pretty energy or like caloric intensive, you know, in terms of what your metabolic needs would be there. Yeah, no, it's great.
Yeah, I feel like instead of being an Olympic athlete, you would have to be like a competitive eater because the amount of energy
and mass
that's required. Mass, because when you grow, that raw material has to come from somewhere, and it typically comes from food. Like I feel like to morph, especially for a large organism, you know, into a wolf or into a bear, it might get hot enough to cook you if you were actually trying to follow the rules of how metabolic energy is actually spent in our bodies.
Oh, if you tried to burn off the wolfness and go back to human.
Yeah, that would make more sense.
All right, so I'd like to ask about sexual dimorphism, and we were talking about the mosquitoes and how they ate blood, but I think it's only the females that eat blood. So how would you handle that sort of thing where one sex has a different diet than the other, and that sort of sexual dimorphism and stuff?
So that's an excellent question, particularly since the sexes in the animal kingdom do not cleanly map up to our idea of male and female. I mean, even human genetics do not map to our idea of male and female. There are many, many different combinations of genetics. So I would hesitate to even address what it would look like to turn from a bird into a human, or from a more hermaphroditic species into a human. I think you'd have to have some element of choice in that case. So you might be a shifter that can more choose what their form you take. Other than that, we probably shouldn't go there.
Well, flatworms would be both.
Yeah. Right. Or like banana slugs. Banana slugs contain both male and female reproductive organs. So if you're a banana slug, you have both, and then you have to try to poke your reproductive bits into the other banana slug, and then it determines whether you are a male or female banana slug.
There's also the tricky aspect that sex determination isn't the same in different species. So XY for humans is typically male, whereas XY for birds is typically female. So do you go the other way then if you become a bird? I don't know.
See, now I'm thinking I want to be a were-man.
That's a great note to end on.
Yeah, no, and then maybe that way I'd make all my money on the dollar. We're getting a little close to time. I think we have time for two more quick questions. And yes,
Mine's just a short, silly, quick question. We were talking about how the mosquitoes were basically just mosquitoes are basically just vampires. In that case, are vampires just subsets of were creatures that drink blood, or are vampires just their own thing? Would they still technically be werewolves or were creatures?
I feel like vampires become vampires and then stay vampires.
Yeah.
So
there are I've definitely seen a lot of vampire media where it's it's in the original Dracula, the count actually turns into a giant bat.
What if you had a population of vampires and a population of vampire bats trying to occupy the same area? What would that look like?
That sounds like gentrification.
Yeah.
All right, one more.
Hi, okay, so I just had a question because we haven't really discussed this. We talked earlier about like if when you became a were whatever, you would have this innate knowledge about your body and like the functionings of a tail. My other question is just like, would you adapt to the animal's social understandings? Like, is their psychology going to then affect you? Like, say you're a were reptile. What if you just start to hate people? Or like, you know, I was thinking were bonobos. You know, their form of aggression is they just start going at it. You know, like what happens then?
It's a great question. Like how solid is the switch, basically?
I don't know. I'm going to become a were-goose and start hissing angrily at people.
Wow.
Yonk.
Wow, everybody! I want to thank you for showing up here first and foremost, and it's so enthusiastically participating. I feel like we've had a were summit today. But my special big thanks to the panel that came in on this topic, not knowing but just participating. And again, thank you all so much for your time and your attention and your great questions and imaginations. Thank you. Of course, this would happen at DragonCon. This is the most creative place on earth. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your con.
Thanks for moderating.